The heavy doors of the Adventurers Guild swung open as Ron was cast out into the cold morning air. In his hand, he clutched a crumpled quest scroll that was essentially a death warrant for any low-level fighter. The mission was clear. He was to travel to the Forbidden Forest and subjugate the legendary Spider Queen. Most veteran warriors would have laughed at the request, but Ron had no other choice to pay off his mounting debts. Hours later, the sunlight vanished beneath the thick, suffocating canopy of the ancient forest. Thick white webs began to coat the trees like ghostly shrouds, sticking to Ron's boots with every step. He reached the entrance of a massive, cavernous hole in the ground that breathed out a chilling wind. Deep inside the cave, 6 massive red eyes flickered to life within the absolute darkness. A gargantuan spider descended from the ceiling, its chitinous legs clicking against the stone floor. Ron's system interface flashed a bright warning red, displaying the creature's level as a staggering 300. Knowing his sword would shatter against her hide, Ron realized that combat was a fool's errand. He remembered the peculiar mechanic of this world. Favorability could override any combat statistic. Instead of drawing his blade, Ron reached into his pack and pulled out a small velvet box he had bought with his last copper. With a trembling voice that echoed through the chamber, he asked the monster to marry him. The giant Spider Queen froze in place, her many eyes blinking in genuine bewilderment at the tiny human. "I don't want to fight you. I want to spend my life with you," Ron shouted, closing his eyes tight. A sudden blinding white light erupted from the center of the cave, dissolving the terrifying exoskeleton of the monster. As the light faded, the monster was gone, replaced by a pale woman with long, flowing white hair. She looked down at her human hands, her red eyes filling with tears of disbelief. You broke the curse that has bound me for a century," she whispered in a melodic voice. Leah stepped forward, her tattered dress trailing behind her as she approached the stunned adventurer. She took the small diamond ring from the box and slid it onto her own finger with a faint smile. Suddenly, Ron's vision was flooded with golden notifications as his level jumped from 1 to 50 in an instant. The system explained that marrying a high-level entity granted the spouse a massive portion of their power. Leah extended her hand to Ron, her gaze now filled with a strange, burgeoning affection. She explained that she was a princess from a forgotten clan, cursed to live as a beast by her own kin. Ron realized that while he had saved her, he was now responsible for her safety against the world. "So, husband, where shall we go to celebrate our first day of marriage?" Leah asked teasingly. Ron stammered, realizing he had no home to bring a beautiful former spider monster back to. They decided to leave the Forbidden Forest behind, walking hand in hand toward the distant horizon. Along the way, Ron practiced his new skills, summoning threads of silk that were as strong as steel. Leah watched him with pride, noting that he was a very quick learner for a human. They stopped by a clear river to wash away the dust and grime of the cavern. As she leaned over the water, Ron saw the faint mark of a spiderweb tattooed on the back of her neck. She explained that this was the mark of the Weaver, a symbol of her family's dark, magical lineage. Ron vowed silently to never let that family hurt her again, regardless of how powerful they were. Together, they reached the outskirts of a small village, hoping to find a place to rest for the night. However, a group of scouts from the Adventurers Guild was already there, searching for the missing sacrifice. Ron pulled Leah into the shadows, his heart racing as he realized they were being hunted. Just then, the air grew unnaturally cold, and a black crow with a single red eye landed on a nearby fence. Leah gasped, recognizing the bird as a familiar belonging to her sister Tina. "We have to move now," she hissed, her eyes darting around the darkening landscape. As they turned to flee, a massive magical barrier shimmered into existence, trapping them within the village limits. From the shadows of the trees, a high-pitched melodic laughter echoed, sounding dangerously like Leah's own. Ron gripped his sword as a figure stepped into the moonlight, bearing the exact same spider mark as his new wife. The mysterious figure stepped out from the shadows, their eyes locking onto the mark on Leah's skin. To their surprise, the stranger was merely an old hermit who recognized the ancient crest and offered them a map to safety. Realizing they couldn't stay in the wild, Ron decided they must vanish into the crowded streets of the royal capital. Days later, the towering white walls of the capital rose before them like a promise of a new life. Leah pulled her hood low, fascinated by the overwhelming sense of spices and fresh bread in the market. Ron used the gold from his previous quest to secure a small, dusty building on the edge of the merchant district. They spent the first week scrubbing grime off the floors and polishing the old oak bar until it shone. Leah used her innate silk weaving skills to create beautiful, shimmering curtains that no ordinary loom could produce. Suddenly, a blue notification window flickered in Ron's vision, announcing a massive boost in his experience points. He realized that every act of kindness toward his wife was fueling his growth more than any monster hunt ever could. Within a month, the Silver Web Tavern became the most popular spot for weary soldiers and local laborers. Leah proved to be a natural at managing the books, her sharp intellect keeping the business thriving. However, Ron knew he couldn't neglect his physical strength if he wanted to protect their new home. He discovered a new skill called Guardian's Bond, which allowed him to manifest spider-like agility in combat. Every night, Leah would tell him stories of her childhood, though she always omitted the details of her family's dark magic. Life felt perfect, a domestic dream that neither of them believed was possible just weeks ago. One afternoon, a group of unruly adventurers entered the tavern looking for trouble. Their leader demanded free drinks, claiming they were the heroes who had cleared the surrounding forests. Ron stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as his leveling system flashed a warning about the intruders' hostility. With a single, fluid movement, Ron disarmed the leader and pinned him against the wall. The tavern went silent as the regulars realized the humble barkeep was far more powerful than he looked. Ron's level jumped again, fueled by the favorability Leah felt seeing him defend their business. He tossed the troublemakers out into the street and told them never to return to the Silver Web. Later that night, Leah thanked him with a kiss that caused Ron's heart rate and his experience bar to skyrocket. He opened his status window to find that he had reached level 50, unlocking a legendary trait called Sovereign's Guard. This trait gave him the ability to sense any magical tracking spells placed on those he loved. To his horror, he noticed a faint, pulsating red thread attached to the back of Leah's neck. He didn't tell her immediately, fearing it would break the peace she had worked so hard to build. For the next few days, Ron patrolled the tavern perimeter more frequently, his senses heightened for any sign of mages. Winter arrived, covering the capital in a blanket of white, and the tavern became a sanctuary of warmth. They celebrated their first festival together, throwing a party for the neighborhood children. Leah wept quietly, admitting she had never felt such genuine human connection in all her years as a monster. A sudden gust of wind blew the tavern doors open, bringing with it a chill that felt unnatural. Ron stood up, his hand reflexively going to the dagger hidden beneath his apron. In the doorway stood a woman in noble attire, her hair the same striking white as Leah's. Leah dropped the tray she was holding, the sound of shattering glass echoing through the room. "So, this is where the runaway bride has been hiding," the woman said, her voice dripping with venom. Ron stepped between them, his level 50 aura flaring as he prepared for a fight he knew he might not win. The woman raised a hand and the floor of the tavern began to sprout thick, black spider silk that moved like snakes. "Sister, please stop," Leah cried out, but the noblewoman only laughed as the shadows grew longer. As the silk wrapped around Ron's legs, the noblewoman revealed a dark artifact that pulsed with a heartbeat, claiming Leah's time had finally run out. The dark artifact pulsed with a rhythmic, sickly purple light as the silk tightened around Ron's legs. Tina stood over him with a look of absolute disdain, her obsidian staff tapping the floor with a heavy thud. Leah reached out one trembling hand toward Ron before her body was pulled backward into the swirling void. Ron roared in frustration as the portal snapped shut, leaving the room in a deafening, hollow silence. He stood up slowly, the blue leveling screens flickering wildly before his eyes as his rage converted into raw stats. A new quest notification appeared in his field of vision, pointing toward the treacherous Forbidden Peaks in the north. Ron grabbed his weathered blade and a heavy cloak, stepping out into the cold night without looking back. The journey took him across jagged mountain passes where the wind howled like a dying beast. Monstrous guardians of the Weaver clan emerged from the shadows, their many eyes glowing with predatory intent. Ron didn't hesitate, his blade trailing arcs of blue light as he sliced through the first wave of attackers. With every monster slain, his level jumped higher, the numbers 150, 180, and 210 flashing in rapid succession. He finally reached the summit, where a massive fortress made of black glass and white silk loomed against the stars. Inside the Great Hall, Leah was chained to a massive web, her mana being drained into a giant glowing crystal above. Tina waited on a throne of bone, watching as Ron burst through the massive iron doors. She told him that a mere human could never stop the ascension of the true Spider Queen. Ron ignored her words, his eyes locked on his wife's pale, suffering face. Tina unleashed a barrage of shadow needles that tore through the air like lethal rain. Ron danced between the projectiles, his movements enhanced by the massive speed boost from his recent level-ups. He slammed into Tina's magical barrier, the impact sending a shockwave that cracked the marble floor. Tina's eyes widened as she realized Ron's level was still climbing, fueled by his desperate love for Leah. Ron whispered Leah's name, and a new prompt appeared: favorability maxed, ultimate skill unlocked. A massive phantom of a golden spider appeared behind Ron, weaving a protective cocoon around his body. With one final strike, he shattered Tina's staff and sent her flying across the room into the shadows. Ron rushed to the silk web, his sword glowing with a gentle light that dissolved the dark chains holding Leah. He caught her as she collapsed, pulling her close to his chest while the fortress began to tremble. The giant crystal above them shattered, releasing a wave of cursed energy that threatened to consume everything. Leah looked into Ron's eyes and told him that only a true kiss of a spouse could break the curse forever. As the ceiling collapsed around them, Ron leaned down and kissed her with all the love he possessed. The golden light expanded, washing away the dark magic and the spider-like features Leah had carried for years. The mountain fortress vanished, replaced by a lush, sunlit meadow as the curse of the Weaver clan was completely erased. Ron and Leah sat in the grass, breathing in the fresh air of a world that no longer hunted them. Tina appeared a short distance away, no longer hostile, but looking lost without her dark powers. Leah stood up and walked to her sister, offering a hand of reconciliation instead of a blade of vengeance. Tina broke down in tears, finally free from the burden of the clan's ancient, cruel expectations. They returned to the capital weeks later, where the tavern was rebuilt and more popular than ever. Ron's level remained at an impressive 300, but he used his power only to chop wood and protect his neighbors. Leah moved through the tavern tables with grace, serving drinks to travelers who told stories of the hero and his queen. At the end of the night, Ron and Leah stood on their balcony looking up at the same stars that once saw their struggle. Ron realized that while his level gave him strength, it was his heart that had truly saved them. The Spider Queen was gone, but the human Leah remained, living a life of love that no system could ever measure.